Hey everyone, welcome back to Retro Tech Chris. Today we've got a very special new segment that we're trying, and that's going to be retro interviews. And I'm very excited to announce that our very first guest is Thomas Andrews from Amiga of Rochester. Hi, Thomas.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining me today.
Absolutely.
What we're gonna do is talk a little bit about what Amiga of Rochester is all about. And I have a couple of questions here for Thomas, and I'm sure he'll have some things to add to it as well. So yeah, let's start out, Thomas. Tell us a little bit about yourself and tell us a little bit about Amiga of Rochester. What is it?
So once again, I'm Tom. I'm a software QA engineer for a software development company in my day job. But by night, I am a Apple and Amiga repair tech. Amiga Rochester is more or less a passion project. I have one of those things where I have a lot of cool tech, but I just don't have the motivation to fix my own things, so I fix other people's things. And it's worked out quite well so far. In the last year, we fixed about 60 Amiga 2000s, which we'll get into kind of how that plays into the business. But yeah, it's more or less just a little bit of fun, a little bit of challenge here and there,
Excellent. Nothing like working for yourself where you can. It's exciting to have the day work as well, but it's certainly fun to work for yourself. So that's a lot of fun that you're working towards that path. That's really cool.
My wife would say the boxes of stuff in the living room might not be so nice, but
I can relate. Yeah, that's part of the retro tech hobby. A lot of times we collect things, and
you are not a retro tech guy if your garage isn't full of old computers or your basement's not full of them.
Exactly. That's very cool. So 60 repairs over the past year. That's great.
That's just the Amiga 2000. I mean, we've done hundreds of recaps, between Amiga and Macintosh, and we did your Dell a while back. So we do everything. We've done Game Gears. It really, so that 60 is just the Amiga 2000 repairs we did, which is how we got our start.
Gotcha. And you mentioned that you like repairing other things and things for other people, and that I can relate to that. Sometimes that's more interesting even than repairing your own things. Is there anything else that really got you into the business or motivated you to get started and start Amiga of Rochester?
No, not really. That was really, I had started with a 2000 I acquired from a local collector. He had ran a BBS group, had a bunch of stuff. His name was Doug. Hi, Doug, if you're watching. Hope you and your wife are well. And I was cleaning it up. It broke, as tech things do. I figured out how to, where everything connected to. Figured it out, and I started offering the service in the Commodore Amiga group. My first customer was Albert, and it's been just repairing other people's stuff since then.
Very interesting.
It's always just as far as why, it really just boils down to I like a little bit of a project, a little bit of a problem to solve, whether that's just replacing caps or figuring out like what traces are broken.
Oh yeah. When it comes to hardware projects, that's always the case. You always find things that tracing them down can be interesting. So I'm sure you've had your experiences with that, and we'll certainly talk about that. And that's interesting.
For sure.
Yeah, that's interesting how you mentioned how you got found. I found you via the Retro Machines group on Facebook. I think that's where we first connected, and I noticed you had posted that you were getting started. Doesn't seem like that long ago, but you've been up and
rolling
it
was about 5 months ago or so.
Yeah,
something like that. Yeah, I try to be in every group I can. Even though the business is Amiga of Rochester, we really do everything.
A little bit of everything. So it's Amiga Plus, I guess you could say. Though there is, there's a Commodore Plus, but there's not an Amiga Plus. So I think we're okay. We could say Amiga.
Well,
Plus.
There is the Amiga 500 Plus.
Oh, okay. So, there you go.
Yeah,
that's good. But that brings up an interesting question. You've got all kinds of different retro machines, everything from the ZX Spectrum to the TRS-80. I know those always need a lot of help. The Tandys to Commodores and Amigas. And I guess I'll ask, why Amiga? How did Amiga win out over all the rest?
So like I had mentioned, I acquired that 2000. I've always had a personal collection. I mean, I have, everything back to like the IBM 5150. I mean, I could start my own tech channel if I had the time to do it, So I've always been a passionate collector. And I got the 2000. I was like, oh, this is an easy thing to start with. I know kind of how it works, and the failure, points are pretty common. So it's not like if I got one versus another board, I'd be running into too different of a failure. Of course you say that, but so that's really, it was really just, it was the first computer or the first system that I had repaired and was offering services for. Even though I had done my own stuff in the past, I wanted to kind of start with a market that was pretty sizable. It's kind of like you don't want to start in a market that's narrow and then you're like, well, I've done 5 things and there's nobody left, right? So there's a big market, and then we started offering capacitor replacement, and that really kind of got us into other markets, because once you start doing something that's common, you just can start going into other markets. And we're trying to expand. It's hard though. Some markets, people want to spend more than others. I guess that's the other reason the Amiga market is pretty rich with people that want to restore their hardware. Our goal is not just to sell a service. I mean, we do go out of our way. So if we wanted it to focus in a market that people care about what they have, you could find a 386 kind of in the garbage, but you really don't find Amigas that commonly in America, being that it, depending on what model it wasn't sold very often. So people, that's the one thing I can say about the Amiga community, they care about what they have. They want to make sure it's running and it's going to last a long time, and we hope to offer that to every customer, that that ability.
Yeah. That's a really good perspective and a really good point. Yeah, I've been kind of following it a little bit. As you know, I'm more of an IBM PC guy, but I've seen those Amigas and those prices just keep rising. So it's something that people enjoy to collect. Whereas, like you said, you can get on eBay and pick up a 386 system a little cheaper. And I think you and I talked at one point, even we were looking at repairing a K7 motherboard, and we both decided, you're like, Chris, just go buy another one. This isn't even worth repairing. But when it comes to things that are a little more a little more expensive and less common, it's like, yeah, get that repaired. But so hence the
I have
motherboard
boards myself. Like I have VESA boards with VESA slots that I need to eventually get to. The issue is once you start getting into like trace repair, like if it's more than like 1 or 2, you got to figure out where they went. And without a reference board, you can sometimes get into the weeds. So that's the other thing. The Amiga community has a lot of documentation, where some of these, and unlike the say C64 where there's 5 boards, you really only have 1 or 2 revisions, so you don't have as much variation. So if you find schematics, they're probably going to match whatever you have.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, nothing like having documentation. Going at it blind can be a little tough. It's like, okay, what do I do here? And yeah, that certainly helps when you're fixing traces and broken logic circuits and the like, for sure. Very good. So so speaking of that, since we do have traces, we have capacitors and other things, what's the most common repair that you end up doing on these systems?
Capacitor replacement. The most, I wouldn't say common, but a prevalent thing that you'll see in the community is they don't need their capacitors replaced. And to that person, I say, I'll see you, please don't come to me, because your stuff will probably be beyond repair by that point. I can't emphasize enough, capacitor replacement is vital to some of these older systems, especially ones that have surface mount capacitors. They were very fragile. The seals that kept the electrolytic, component in the cap, it was, from what I had been told, it breaks down once it was heated. So they now have 30 years of degradation, and that's why they're leaking. Modern caps, they've kind of resolved all that. You really don't see it too often. Now what you see is them drying out, which is what we're starting to see in like the Xbox and that Dell that you sent me. They don't leak as much as they just go bad. Like they vent, and that's due to their age. Also obviously the plague of the early 90s, where every capacitor was basically a clone of a terrible recipe. But yeah, like capacitor, and that applies to Macintosh, that applies to Amiga, that applies to, again, PCs. Definitely check your systems. I would love to say that battery repair, battery damage is one, but usually that's not repairable. Usually, if you've ever seen a Macintosh where the battery's exploded, the board is pretty much relegated to parts at that point. So that's the other thing. Check your batteries. Those batteries can and do explode, and I don't mean leak. They explode.
Yeah, yeah. Oh wow. Oh no kidding. I wasn't aware of
Yeah,
that.
you like go look up if you ever look it up, you'll see just there's a crater right on the board where the battery like is just full of like I don't know what the stuff is, but it's corrosive and it just eats away all the traces.
Huh. So something goes pop in the night and boom, there goes your battery. That's really interesting. I wasn't aware of that. And something else I
Yeah.
didn't know that I just learned now from you is that capacitors can also cause damage. I was aware that they'd get to a point where they vented, but I wasn't aware of those surface mount caps. So that's really interesting.
Yep, surface mount caps is for, on Macintosh are one of the leading damage causers. In fact, a lot of people will just recap the board, and wash it. That's not really enough. You really want to be careful because that stuff eats away the solder and it causes it to dry out. I just did, in fact, a Quadra 605, not Quadra, but a Centra 605, and the board, like where the capacitor had leaked, all the solder was dried out. So we went over it with flux and braid, cleaned it all up, made it almost new. I think a lot of tech YouTubers kind of just give, hey, boom, replace the caps, and that's it. You got to look over the board, and that's something we do, is we do a physical inspection of everything that comes in. If we've taken analog boards for your monitor, we'll wash them. Like we'll throw them through our ultrasonic. We take a lot of precautions to make sure that failure is not something that occurs down the road.
That's great. Yeah, when you speak of tech YouTubers and repairers, we'll get to me in a minute. I'll tell you my repair skill. I'll have some questions for you to maybe enhance it. Spoiler
Yeah,
alert,
absolutely.
I can solder things, but it's usually a one-way street. My soldering is fine, but nothing works when I'm done. But that's another story we'll talk about.
Hey, I was there myself, only about 10 years ago, so we'll get into that. I got a list of tips for everybody.
Very good. But before we talk about that, let's talk about what your favorite repair was or has been so far.
So, I would love to say it was my own 2000 because, I am where I am. In fact, that probably is my favorite because, from that, I've gotten where I am and learned so much. But probably one of my favorites is going to be somebody sent in I think it was a 2CI, and it was, something they had used through college, and, it hadn't worked in 10 years, and we got it, we removed all the damaged components. We replaced them with brand new ones, cleaned everything up, made sure there was no damage, and it went back to them working. There's been a few of those where it was, they were like, this means a lot to me. It was, my father's or whoever, so for us, we don't look at things from a monetary value. We look at it from the kind of the personal, bond of it. It's like, if it's something that somebody cherishes, we'd rather, give it to you, do the work for free, knowing that it's going to mean a lot, than to go, oh, yeah, sorry, can't help you. That's we've done repairs for free just based on that. Somebody sent in something and it's like, hey, it took me 10 minutes to fix it. We don't charge like a lot of places do, where it's like a minimum. Like if something took us 5 minutes to fix, we'll be like, hey, just whatever shipping is. So we do a lot for the person, not just the item.
Gotcha. Well, that's very noble, and thank you. I appreciate that. I know that I sent you something that was very dear to me, and you helped me troubleshoot it and get it to the next step. So I appreciate that, and I know the community appreciates that as well. Yeah, so one thing I noted earlier is that, well, I can't solder, or if I can, I end up with something that doesn't work afterwards. There may be a lot of folks who are into retro tech or even modern tech, but don't really know how to repair things. Is there some advice you can give folks like me to get started and to be successful with doing repairs?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I got it when I first started soldering. I was in the same boat. I won't lie. 10 years ago, did try to do a power jack on a laptop. Yeah, it didn't work afterwards. And I'm, humility is, when I try to put that out there. But, the way I started is when I was running a software development business many years ago, and my partner, he bought a soldering station, with hot air, and he bought an Arduino kit. He was like, hey, why don't you just mess with this? And that's where I learned. I was like, okay, there's a few things I can give as recommendations. Number one is get a proper soldering iron. That is key. Do not go to, Home Depot and buy, one of those non-temperature regulated ones. That will be that. I think that's a lot of people's biggest issue is they buy the wrong gear. So I recommend either getting a good, don't skimp out on any of the what I'm about to list. So you want a good Hacko with adjustable temp, Weller's good, any name brand that you recognize. Another one, if you're on a budget, although it's not that much cheaper than a Hacko, is a KSGER. Voltar, who's another YouTuber who has great tutorials, by the way, on soldering. I'll get into that at the end. I personally go with T12 tips, but honestly, if you can get a variable adjustment soldering iron from somebody, who's not using it anymore, that'd probably be better than anything you can buy that's not, adjustable. The next thing is good leaded solder, not lead free. I think lead free solder is a lot of people's kind of, biggest pain when they get into soldering. They're like, my joints don't look good. It's, you can see the ball of solder. Lead free needs a lot more heat, and again, those crappy irons can't really heat well enough. But lead solder, you just go on Amazon, look up lead solder. I personally use Kester, but really anything for most people is going to be fine. I didn't use lead. I used lead free for a long time, and once I found out about leaded solder, I think it honestly changed my soldering life. Another thing is going to be good flux, something from like MG Chem. However, a lot of videos will tell you, add more flux. If you have good solder with rosin core flux already in it, for a lot of things like say replacing a socket or something like that, you really don't need more flux. That's just more to clean up later. However, it doesn't hurt. Again, get a good tacky flux. Liquid flux is fine too, but make sure to look at reviews. Go on Amazon, just look up flux, and go with whatever kind of fits your budget, but just make sure you're buying something with decent reviews. And second to last thing is going to be the right tip. There's tons of different tips you can get for your iron. Go and look up videos, look at what people are using. Usually it's going to be like a conical tip, but I personally use a J tip. That gives you a thicker part and a thinner part. So if you need to reach around, say, a piece of plastic, you could kind of, tilt the iron in in the right, kind of get your, finger in the right position, and it'll, liquefy the solder, and you won't, burn that plastic. I guess another tip is get some good Kapton tape. That'll put that on anything plastic, especially if you're using hot air. The last thing is go and watch videos. There's plenty of videos by, reputable people like EED blog. Probably where I learned a lot of my original techniques. I believe the Ben Heck show, which is no longer around, but Ben Heck does do or does have soldering videos. And then again, Voltar. He's got great videos and tips on how to desolder. So there's a lot of great resources out there. I guess ultimately the best way to learn is to go and watch other people. Kind of look at what they do. Excellent.
That's great. Yeah, we'll put some of those links in the description below if folks want to explore. Those are some great tips for folks that want to get started. Sounds Absolutely. Like you've got everywhere from beginning to even intermediate tips and advanced tips. So that's good, so folks can realize this is what you need to do. So thanks for sharing that. So I know we've talked a little bit about your different repairs you've done, repairs you've enjoyed. Let's talk a little bit about your first repair memory and what that was like for you. I know you have something you want to talk about.
Yeah. So the first vivid memory was actually of I believe it was a Tandy 1000 SX. I know it was a Tandy. I'm not positive on the model, but I'm pretty sure it's a 1000 SX, and I'm pretty sure I managed to get one locally about a year ago. I haven't had time to build it, but it's got the hard card that I remember. So when I was younger, my father had gotten one from his father. And, it was where I learned DOS and kind of, type, all the commands. There was no interface, Windows 3.1 wasn't even a thing. And, I took it apart. I don't even remember. I'm probably like 10, maybe earlier. I really, and all I remember is taking it apart and not knowing what to do with it afterwards. And that kind of stuck with me as like, okay, how do things work? Why do we, and all throughout my childhood, I would dismantle things trying to figure out like, okay, why doesn't this toy work? I never did figure out why it did work, but that was kind of the seeds of it. And when I was 16, I actually started working for a computer repair shop locally. And this was right during the middle of the capacitor plague. I mean, the board just, and I remember, it's like, we never did fix them, but I do remember being like, oh, we could do that ourselves, but that was kind of the thing where I'm like, that, if those go bad, things don't work, and so I've always been into kind of digging into things and figuring out why they don't work. I try to do my own car work, just it's again, everything I do, I try to put passion into, because, if there's no passion, it's just another thing you're doing. I could pay someone to do that,
Yeah. So I can see you definitely have a lot of passion in what you do, and it's absolutely great. And I'm sure that's been a driving factor for Amiga of Rochester. It's been very successful, as we see. I know there's people who are going to watch this video and want to learn more about how they can get in contact with you and get their repairs done. So what's the best way for people to get in contact with you and to get their parts to you so they can get them fixed?
So I'm available on Reddit under Amiga of Rochester. I'm on most major forums, most major Facebook groups for like Macintosh, Amiga, C64. But the easiest way is through my website, amigaofrochester.com. There's a contact us form. Just let us know, what you got going on. We'll let you know how we can help, what the process is. We don't need the whole system for a lot of people who are like, I don't want to ship a whole computer. In fact, we encourage you not to do that. We have done that, but it's very limited. We just need the boards. We're happy to provide any help with disassembly as far as like what you need. We're if something doesn't work out, like say it's a board we can't fix, we don't generally charge for that. We're again, we want people to feel like they got the best treatment. If you come and the board is, say, damaged beyond repair, we'll let you know what alternatives we have, and whether that's convert, if you have an Amiga 4000, for example, maybe it's transplanting to a new board. But again, we won't charge you for something that doesn't work, and we want you to feel like your family. We're going to help you out wherever we can.
Excellent. And we'll definitely put some links down in the description so that you can find Tom here. So we have Tom Andrews, Amiga of Rochester. Thank you so much for joining today and doing this interview with me. I've learned a lot. I'm sure that my viewers have learned a lot. It's been great having you along today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. All right, folks. Well, hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, it's been great having you along for the retro journey. And until next time, we'll see you later. Bye for now.